What is up, my lovely fellow weirdos, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome to the end of the world, apparently. If you're new here, my name is Tawny Michelle, and basically I'm a weirdo and a spiritual human here on YouTube. So this video is likely going to be controversial, and some people may not agree with me, and that is completely 100% okay. But this is a video I had planned for a while now and that I did want to do in the future and I did start kind of taking notes on a while back. Notes just help me in my videos not wander off and not forget anything. I do have a lot of air in my chart, so I do tend to wander off places. So basically we are going to be talking about what spirituality personally means to me, and remember, these are just all my opinions, and how I view spirituality, how I have experienced spirituality versus ego and ego spiritualism or egoality. Another term that was actually phrased by Chogyam Trungpa, and I'm so sorry if I'm butchering that, but it's this guy right here, is spiritual materialism. Basically, it is when the ego kind of takes over spirituality. I want to make it clear that this video is not to bash anybody. This video is not to judge anybody. This video is not to call out anybody, really. I mean, it's kind of calling you out, and it's possibly kind of calling other people out in the spiritual community, but I want to make it clear that everything I talk about in this video is 100% natural for every single human. I don't want it to come across like I'm saying I'm right and you're wrong and this, that, and the other, because that's not what this is. I just think it's a really interesting topic because of the crazy things that are happening in the world right now with the virus and the economy and everything, and it's not probably going to go away anytime soon, or at least, you know, it's going to be carried out for a while, in my opinion. I think it's really important to talk about this because I think there's a lot of people, whether you are in spirituality or just getting into spirituality, that are kind of lost on how to find the spirituality in this situation, and that's another huge reason that I wanted to talk about this. It's not so much about other people in the spiritual community as it is you, and that is why I'm talking about this, to maybe help you and to maybe help you get some kind of new perception on something that can help you during these really heavy times right now. I couldn't just upload another pick a card reading or, you know, a video on manifestation without kind of addressing what's going on, and I felt like this video kind of ties into that in a weird way. I just wanted to make that clear. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into this. I'm going to kind of break this down because I get a lot of people that ask me what I believe, or that possibly misunderstand me sometimes during the readings that I do here on YouTube, where I talk about what I believe and get offended and so on and so forth. So I'm going to try to explain it the best way that I can, and if you have any questions, you can leave them below and I will do my best to answer you. So first off, you may notice that there are a lot of contradictions in spirituality and the spiritual community. You probably hear some people that are always like, think positive, only think positive thoughts, like, you know, just if you think positive, you attract positive, and so on and so forth. And then you hear other people, like me, for example, that are like, do shadow work, and, you know, that's not healthy to just think positive. And then you hear some people that are like, the law of attraction, it's great, it works, do it, it'll change your life. And then you hear other people saying it's an ego-based kind of thing. You hear some people telling you to ignore negativity, and then you hear other people telling you to speak up and own your truth and, you know, really embrace who you are. And then you hear some people saying like, we are all one, we are all connected. And then you hear other people saying like, you know, be your individual self and don't be scared to cut people out of your life. And so there's all these kind of like contradictions in the spiritual community, and I've been noticing them come more and more and more to a head. For me, what I believe is it varies, it fluctuates. Sometimes we have to play the game. I call it a game. Sometimes we have to play the game of life. We have to play the ego game, right? Where there is separation, there is good and bad, there is right and wrong. We are not all one, we are different, etc. I believe that the ego is what makes us kind of different. It's what makes us human. It's where our fear kicks in, and fear is necessary. It's not that I don't believe that we need to like kill the ego, you know, because that's just another fight. That's just another duality. That's just another separation. Ego is separation. Ego is duality. Ego is fear, okay? And as a result of fear, there is separation. So there is thinking that I'm right and you're wrong, or I'm good and you're bad, right? It's kind of like that whole kind of duality concept, in my opinion. So it really depends on your own personal situation and your own personal journey. You may be going through something where you are already trying to think positive. You are already only trying to do positive things, yet you keep getting negative thoughts. You keep having negative feelings. And so you may be in a situation where you need to do shadow work, you know what I mean? And then some of you may be in another situation where you're constantly fighting, you're constantly resisting, you're constantly speaking your truth, but it's not getting you anywhere. So, you know, you may need to take a step back and be more of in a surrender allowance state instead of constantly resisting and fighting. So it just really depends on where you're at in your spiritual journey, and also where you're at kind of each day, because I fluctuate. And that's the thing about this, is we all go back and forth. Sometimes something happens and I jump back into ego, I jump back into the game, but I make sure that I'm staying aware, and I'm usually aware of it when I'm doing that, right? And then other times I'm looking at it from a higher perspective. Now, when I say higher, I don't mean better, okay? I do not mean better. I do not mean good and then bad, right? That's not what I mean. But other times, you know, sometimes I'm looking at it from a separated state, and sometimes I'm looking at it from a higher state, because guess what? I am human. And if you've been here for a while, then you've heard me say this plenty of times. We are not here to be perfect. We are not here to be these divine beings that are just like completely supernatural 24/7 and just perfect in the making. We were created to be imperfect. That is how we are. If we were here to be perfect and to be like some kind of supernatural being, then we would not be here, in my opinion. We are human. We have flaws. We have an ego. Fear is a good thing in some instances, because it tells us if we are getting too close to the edge of a cliff, right? It tells us if there is, you know, if we see a shark fin and we're in the ocean, we need to freaking go, right? Like, it tells us if someone breaks in and robs our house and holds a gun to our heads, like, we need to react in some way. We need to do something, or we need to sit still. Whatever the case may be, it keeps us alive. So the ego is relevant. The ego is there for a reason, or else it wouldn't be there. In my opinion, spirituality is realizing this. And it is taking a step back and being able to observe the you that you think you are, your ego, being able to observe it from a different point of view, which is the you that you actually are, and being able to see how it all interconnects and being able to integrate. And we're going to get more into that in a minute. So hopefully I'm making sense so far. Let me know down below if I am. But if we were to just focus on positive, which I think has nothing to do with spirituality at all, that is more self-help, spiritual materialism, spiritual egoism kind of shit, and I'll explain why in a second. If we were to just constantly focus on the positive, that is super harmful. How would we be able to deal with this coronavirus right now? Because by those terms, like, we would need to ignore it, or else something's wrong with us, right? And so those people that kind of teach that, it's almost using guilt as a virtue, because in a way it's saying, if you don't think positive, or if you don't, like, if you do attract something negative into your life, then there's something wrong with you. And that's like, no, it's called life. It's called human existence. Okay, so that is what I believe. But let's go ahead and get into it. This is the difference between spirituality versus spiritual materialism. And I do highly suggest that you pick up this book, Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism, by this guy. He is the one that coined it. And then I also will link a website down below that I found very helpful when I first started researching spiritual materialism, called lonerwolf.com, that kind of gives all kinds of information on it as well. Let's go ahead and get into it. So what is spiritual materialism? This is kind of what I label as self-help. All these kind of concepts that I read off, and you may feel a little called out when I read some of these, and you may feel like you know people that do these things too, because I do, and it's okay, and they're on their own journey, they're on their own path, you know what I mean? But if we weren't to play the human game, and I want to just make this clear, the human game is important. It is how we learn and grow, okay? So doing these things are necessary. It's just being aware of them. okay? It's being aware of them. And it's taking a step back and thinking, is this coming from my ego or is this coming from my higher self? So if you Google spiritual materialism, you will find the definition of the belief that a certain temporary state of mind is a refuge from suffering. Using practices such as meditation or drugs or some kind of spiritual high exercise to basically remain in a numbed out euphoric state. Now, the two other huge terms that you will hear me go back to with spiritual materialism are resisting and fear. So anytime you are resisting, escaping, trying to avoid something, trying to make something better, like all of that is ego. Like we are constantly trying to escape the present moment, right? We are not okay with the present moment. And so that is all ego. But like I said, it's important and it's necessary. So don't feel like I am saying don't do this, because that's impossible and that's ego too, right? Like, so you'll see what I mean. So spiritual materialism is only worried about basically self-seeking. It's only worried about comfort. It wants to be comfortable, which hence the whole, stay positive and only think positive thoughts and positivity. Spirituality is not all positive. It's not. It's dealing with life, and life is not all positive. There is a balance. There is duality. There is and there isn't. But either way, it is not going to be all positive, whatever your definition of positive is, okay? It is not going to be comfortable 24/7. There are some really shitty times in life. We have to deal with some really shitty things in life, like right now in the world, you know what I mean? And on that note, think of like some of the most greatest moments in history where people stood up, okay? So Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King. These are just examples, but if they wouldn't have did what they did, things would not have changed. Sometimes we have to meet the fear where it's at. Sometimes we have to respond to those emotions to meet it where it's at. I'm not saying that spirituality is all about just allowing things to happen to you 24/7. No, it's about being true to you. Sometimes you have to meet those emotions, those fears, and those thoughts where they're at instead of trying to take a shortcut or escape them. Spiritual materialism is escaping pain. You know what I mean? Which is the same thing as seeking comfort, like trying to escape pain in some way, shape, or form, or negativity, or what you view as negativity. It's chasing your own tail. It's chasing the ego game of duality. I'm right, you're wrong. Or I need something outside of me to make me better. Or look how much I have achieved. And, look how much I make, or look how many certificates I have. It can also come in the form of wanting to disconnect from your emotions, or disconnect from the world, or disconnect from other people's emotions, or other people's issues, you know what I mean? Which can be healthy to some extent. We need to do that sometimes. But if you're trying to be in a numbed out state where other people don't affect you ever, that's not normal. Spiritual materialism can also come in the form of judgment. So constantly judging others, constantly thinking others are something that you're not, which is separation once again. But in a way, once you start doing shadow work, once you start, awakening and becoming more conscious, judgment can actually help you, because you become more aware through judging other people what part of you you're actually judging when you're judging other people. Another way spiritual materialism can manifest is basically trying to get around the human condition. So what I've seen some people do is basically try all these different techniques, exercises, practices, books, whatever, tools to try to basically ascend the human condition, or try to be perfect, or think that they're going to live in the spirit world 24/7. No, we're here to be humans. We're here for a reason. So these are some signs of spiritual materialism that you can look for within yourself. And yes, you may notice them in others too. That is okay. These are just some signs, and some of these were also listed on the website. I'm going to link down below, but I either added some things to them or I added my own. So more signs are basically chasing constantly after the next thing, tool, technique, practice, information, etc., that you think will make you better or more spiritual in some way, because the ego believes that you already are separate from being better, or that you need to one up somehow. Another thing is practicing or doing things that just to make you more comfortable, right? To make you feel less, discomfort, less fear, which isn't really taking care of the problem. It's just like finding ways around the problem, or even less emotionally attached or more peaceful. Something you can ask yourself is, are you doing things to either get or avoid a feeling or a thought or a situation? And the thing with this is you can't avoid it forever. Eventually, whatever it is that you're trying to avoid, whether it's a feeling, a fear, a situation, you will have to deal with that, because you can't avoid yourself forever. And that's the thing about spiritual materialism. It's still the ego trying to avoid itself. It's just using spirituality as a way to do it, right? It still tricks us into thinking spirituality is a way that we can one up, you know what I mean, and avoid what we don't want to deal with, and avoid the truth and the reality of the situation. So the next one may make some people mad, because every time I mention the law of attraction, people get so pissed. So basically, it's using the law of attraction. Now, I do think some law of attraction teachings are somewhat relevant in my opinion, but I feel like a lot of the way that it's taught, the way that I see it mostly talked about and taught, is spiritual materialism in my eyes. And I've seen it, just in other things that I've read, researched, etc. But it's all ego. So using some kind of manifestation, LOA technique to make things better or to make yourself more comfortable, because your ego tells you that it's already not. Your ego tells you that basically you need to do XYZ, or you need to manifest this thing because it's not good enough how it is, or that you're not good enough the way that you already are. Another sign is ignoring, escaping, fighting, fear, not wanting to face truths or own up to any wrongs or mistakes that you may have made. Another funny one is trying to kill the ego, which is an ego game in the first place. And I know it's crazy. The ego will mask itself under trying to kill itself, because like I said, the ego is needed, and the soul or the higher self or the real you understands that, it's here for a reason, like I said before. And also, we're like trying to be perfect or not human in some way, or not deal with the human condition in some way. So another one is using spiritual achievements to basically disconnect or feel better about yourself, or to brag about your achievements and your titles and this, that, and the other. So another one that seems to be pretty popular in the spiritual community is taking ideas, techniques, or concepts, or practices, or information from others without consent or without giving them credit, for your own gain or for your own purpose, for your own basically achievements in some way, or to make money off of it. Another thing to watch out for is practices or techniques or teachers that make it seem like they are bigger and better, and like they are the only thing that can help, or they are the only one that can help. Practices and teachers that offer instant success or instant gratification or shortcuts or instant results or instant love, instant abundance, whatever kind of instant success. That's spiritual materialism, and that's coming from the ego as well. So kind of like I mentioned before, focusing only on the positive and what you want, or basically what your ego wants, instead of the truth or the reality or the shadow, your own shadow, trauma, wounds, underlying beliefs, emotions. And so this is why I always say I'm not all love and light, because this is people that say love and light, good vibes only, high vibes, things like that. That's just so unrealistic. You cannot be in that state 24/7. And if you are, then it's completely an egoic thing. You've completely put yourself in a delusional state, because you are ignoring anything or detaching yourself from anything that your ego feels like doesn't serve you. Another thing is only showing the great, perfect, spiritual parts of your life, instead of showing any of like the messy parts or the vulnerable parts or the harder parts of life that we all go through, and basically acting that you're just #woke all the time. So another one is spiritual narcissism. Basically, the spiritual ego. The website actually wrote this down as, this is the climactic result of spiritual materialism, the ego becoming so big, so bulletproof, that it not only unconsciously believes it is more awakened than others, but it will do anything to reinforce that specialness, including harming others through arrogance and narcissism. And that's basically like one of the biggest ones that the website had on there. So now we're going to go over the flip side to that. And this is just my opinion. So some of the ones I just read you were things that I found other places and I kind of put them into my own words, or things that I've come up with. But this part about just spirituality is things that I've kind of come up with through my own experience. So spirituality to me is realizing pain, okay? It is being more aware, being more mindful, connectedness, oneness, right? Love, truth, integration, compassion. Those are all the key words that I think of when I think of spirituality. It's realizing that pain is necessary and unavoidable at times. You know what I mean? It's going to happen in our lives no matter what. It's no longer constantly having to have something or having to find out the next thing or be better, or hooked on trying to make the ego feel better about itself, if that makes sense. And it's also having a complete perception change, right? Because you're here to kind of live in a material world, but we're also spiritual beings, and that's how spiritual materialism can kind of come to be, is you try to take the spiritual and put it in the material world with the ego, and that's when it manifests in those ways that I've named. But if you are really becoming aware of this, it's not that you shouldn't do all of those things, because you are going to, no matter how tapped in you are going to still do those things from time to time, right? Like I said, we're human. We're not here to be perfect. That's unattainable, because we're already perfect the way that we are, right? So it's becoming more aware. It's becoming aware of when you make judgments. It's becoming aware of your emotions of any kind and not rejecting them. It is integration, okay? Negative and positive emotions are necessary. Negative and positive thoughts are necessary. It is bringing together the duality instead of separating it. It is authenticity. It is truly tapping into the parts of you that you don't like in order to integrate them, in order to heal them, in order to work through them, instead of rejecting them and living in your own positive bubble and trying to manifest what you do like, right? That is all ego. It's understanding that there are cycles, right? And that we are human, that we're gonna screw up sometimes. It's understanding that we are imperfectly perfect the way that we are. It's understanding that we will fluctuate from the game of ego to a more enlightened state, to the game of ego, to a more enlightened state, because we learn through those cycles. And we grow and we learn more about ourselves. Therefore, we learn more about others through those cycles. Understanding both. It's also awareness of the ego and when the ego is at play and when you're in the ego game. And once you start really getting into spirituality, you will start learning more about when you're playing the game and when you're not, and why it all connects in a way. And because I catch myself doing it all the time. And that's why I struggled for a while with making this video, because I felt like I wanted to make it in a way that wasn't out of ego, if that makes sense. And some of the reasons I originally wanted to make it were out of ego, to be 100% real with you guys. So it's kind of like being more aware of it. It's not trying to kill it. It's not trying to, destroy it, because that's impossible. It's just becoming more aware of it and unraveling it from time to time, to take a step back and watch it without attaching yourself to it. It's also being aware of the human condition and that we are humans and that we are not here to be perfect. Spirituality isn't about escaping your reality. It's about being in acceptance of your reality. It's about accepting the current moment instead of trying to get the next best thing, or trying to, one up somehow, or trying to, control your reality the way that you want to. It's facing all emotions, all fears, all parts of yourself, all situations. It's facing it all, no matter how uncomfortable it is. It's facing the truth. It's facing the reality. It's integration of all, no matter how uncomfortable it is. And it is freedom to me. So yeah, basically spirituality to me is about awareness. It's about being more conscious of the unconscious and not constantly trying to one-up life or one-up the universe or one-up whatever with ego, right? Because when you're trying to manifest, and all these law of attractioners out here, when you're trying to manifest or control your life and the situation, you're basically saying that your ego knows what's best, because your higher self is completely okay with where you're at. And if that thing that you want so bad is supposed to come to you, it will. but you have to put in the steps for it, right? Because you can try, like, I don't know about you, but you can try really, really hard to succeed at something. And sometimes that's just not in the cards for you. Sometimes that's just not part of your path here in this life. And it's happened to all of us. And sometimes we can look back and be like, thank God that didn't work out. And there's actually a quote by Suzuki that says, enlightenment is like everyday consciousness, but 2 inches above the ground. And that's literally how I view it as well. But yeah, you guys, we are human. Like, if we were here to not experience the ups and downs of life and live in this love and light, only love and light, namaste, bubble 24/7, and only have great things happen to us and only have what we want happen to us and only be positive and high vibe and on this spiritual high 24/7, then why be here? Why even be born? You know what I mean? Like, why come into this world? Lower vibrations, I can't stand those words, but they're necessary. Negative emotions, hard, painful emotions are necessary. They help us grow. The idea of spirituality to me isn't to transcend or cheat or escape or manipulate the human condition. It's to integrate and be aware and to bring the unconscious to the conscious. That is what spirituality is to me, you guys. And like I said, we are all going to be on different sides of this spectrum because we're all in different places in our spiritual journey. And you will see the more that you go along, the more that you really get into your journey, you will see yourself become more and more aware of when you are kind of playing in the ego game and when you are kind of taking a step back from it. So, and like I said, I don't want any of you guys to feel bad if you do this or, you know, anything like that, because it's necessary. It is part of this game of life, in my opinion. And so don't feel like I'm judging you, because I've done these things. I've done a lot of these things, you know what I mean? And I'm still not perfect, okay? Like, I'm human, but that's part of it. I want you guys to know that I'm not perfect. That's what true spirituality is to me. I am imperfectly perfect, just the way I am. I don't care being vulnerable with you guys. I don't care being honest with you guys, because that is what spirituality is all about to me personally. So hopefully this helped you and was interesting for you in some way. Definitely let me know down below if you did find it interesting. I hope you guys are staying safe out there with this virus, and that's another reason I wanted to share this with you guys, because we can use this kind of spectrum of spirituality and spiritual materialism to realize when we are maybe in a state of too much fear, too much ego, and balance that out with awareness and spirituality, and be there to help others, right? Because there's a lot of people in the world, because of this virus, that I feel like they are just instantly like feeling like they're in survival mode, because fear kicks in and it takes over, and they start, you know, trying to one up everybody else, you know, grabbing all the toilet paper, grabbing all the food, grabbing all the masks, like, and it's like, we need to be there for each other right now. We don't need to forget our humanity, okay? We don't need to forget our spirituality, okay? So that is another reason I wanted to share this video. If there are any more videos or topics you would like to hear me discuss, leave them down below. And also, I wanted to read you the first sentence or two of this book. It says, "The inspiration to find the truth, to see what is real, and to lead a genuine life, the culmination of which can be enlightenment, is what underlies every spiritual journey. However, embarking on this journey is rarely as straightforward as we may wish. The journey toward enlightenment ultimately may be both profound and simple, yet the process of understanding that simplicity tends to be multidimensional, if not downright complicated. For in order to understand the spiritual path, we must acknowledge and understand our own mind, now as it pertains to the journey. What misunderstandings and concepts we may have about a spiritual practice, we must overcome so that we're not merely practicing according to our own conceptualized idea. Ego and the myriad games it plays to unravel our inspiration for enlightenment must always be monitored." And I will see you guys in my other videos. Please stay safe. Bye.